I hope for any Green Party members who are watching to take this as very important perspective and advice, which is that don't be down on yourselves or the party if you are there and participating for the right reasons, because you should not be ashamed of your battle scars. If you don't know what COINTELPRO is, at least read the fucking Wikipedia article for COINTELPRO. It's a great primer on how the FBI in the 60s and 70s infiltrated the anti-war and Black Power movements to render them ineffective and committed assassination by cop. And when you understand that a lot of the fuckery that we experience as third parties is not because of people who are like us and who are there for the right reasons, it's because of infiltrators and saboteurs. And even if you don't want to be as high conspiracy minded as me in this, look, the Democrats and Republicans have annual budgets in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's just the parties, not counting all of the dark money and campaign money and blah, 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 so much other money around the duopoly. You think they're going to defend themselves from any challengers? If I was in the military industrial complex at the point where I was like conscientiously sponsoring both parties to make sure that my weapons kept getting bought, and I was giving them millions and millions of dollars, I would be disappointed if they were not using some of that money to sabotage the Greens and the Libertarians. So I say this to you as I would say to Libertarians: let's be proud of our scars, not ashamed of them. And I don't know if that's it in the Green Party, but we've experienced things in the LP where you go, that's not organic, you know. And I think we all need to maintain at least whatever is our own well thought out, researched version of that awareness.
Well, certainly there's a lot of resources out there. There's a Nation article that I think everybody should read called George Soros's Long Strange Trip, where they talk about him giving over $100,000 to Kevin Zeese, which is, I think, relevant in terms of analyzing what happened to the Green Party over recent years. But again, I really wanted you to educate me on what happened in 2020 with the Libertarian Party. Again, just because I didn't follow it. And I think what's odd for me is that I know in 2016, I know that Gary Johnson was running again. He was the 2012 nominee for the Libertarian Party. So it kind of made sense to me, although it may not have agreed, where they went with Gary Johnson in 2016 over John McAfee. But in 2020, Gary Johnson wasn't running. John McAfee is this household name. You had several other lively candidates, and the Libertarian nominee at the end of the day was somebody who nobody had ever heard of before. So again, I'm just wondering if you could kind of walk me through what the story was in 2020, what happened. Do you think that there was sort of top-down influence? I know that there's been sort of ongoing frictions within the Libertarian Party between Nick Sarwark and the Ron Paul faction and maybe some other factions. And just again, briefly, could you kind of describe what happened in nominating a candidate for the Libertarian Party in 2020?
No. Any such attempt to summarize the general narrative or speculate as to what was happening behind the scenes would be baldly self-serving of me. So I'm going to decline to try to do that. If you want to maybe ask more specific questions, but yeah, when I say we saw enough squirrely shit, I will say a lot of that was around the chair at the time, Nick Sarwark. If you see what he's done since then, it's very suspect. And the manipulations around the virtual convention and the shutdowns around COVID certainly played a role in that. But yeah, that's as far as I'll go, unless you want to ask more specific questions without sounding too self-serving. But yes, I will say I was grateful, and I said it from the beginning when it was me versus Bill Weld, that if the result of my campaign is just that we nominate someone like Jacob Hornberger instead of someone like Bill Weld, I will have considered it worth my while. But and I would have said the same about Joe Jorgensen. But given that she was not a full-time candidate, did not have a resume or besides having been the VP nominee 20 years prior and done a great job at that. And personally, I love Joe. I think she's great. I like her message. I think she represents a voluntary, ethical version of libertarianism, and I was happy to support her. But there was a lot of manipulation that ended up with her getting the victory, and it didn't seem very much connected to her. So yeah, I think those statements are kind of irrefutable.
So I guess just the first part of this, in regards to John specifically, was he considered an official candidate? Because that was another whole issue in the Green Party nomination process, where they have something called the PCSC, which determines who's an official Green Party candidate and who's not an official candidate. And, state parties even have some leeway there, where in North Carolina, for example, Howie Hawkins was the only candidate on the ballot in the Green Party primary in 2020. So what was the case with John and the Libertarian Party? Was he considered an official candidate? Did he get delegates, or just was he disqualified because he wasn't in the country or anything like that?
I think it was more on him and strategy and messaging than with the LP. As far as I recall, except for the sort of typical bickering factional silliness, I think the LP was generally accepting of him as a candidate. It was just, well, he's not here, so he's not. But he participated online, he did interviews, but also at one point he was running independent, and I was really disappointed because I wanted him to run LP straight through. I think because as long as the LP has the statement of principles as its grounding, and it's a pretty low bar, but like as long as we are that party of principle, then we should focus our efforts there. And this isn't to say like I don't think Greens should do green activism, but I think they should be libertarians. And I think we would actually all be more effective. For a while, actually, I was working on getting Cynthia McKinney as my running mate. And I think it would have been an amazing opportunity for a fusion ticket for 2020. And I would still love to see that happen. I have an incredible amount of respect for her. And she was on board with my platform, which was my campaign was purely platform driven, of taking the federal government apart and through a bankruptcy process to localize it down to the 50 states, where I'm not running for president. You give me the ring of power, I throw it in the fire, resign on day one, and take us through a peaceful, orderly, responsible bankruptcy process. John McAfee was on board with that. Cynthia McKinney was on board with that. And that's why, while in exile and grappling with this relationship with the LP in the process, John McAfee became my running mate. And because I was in a much better position, I was going to the debate. I was considered a top contender candidate throughout the campaign.
Do you think that there were a lot of people within the Libertarian Party who didn't want John to represent the party just because of maybe his personal antics and whatnot?
Yeah, but that's, like I said, normal factional silliness, divisiveness. There's an element of the Libertarian Party that just stylistically is opposed to anybody like that isn't sort of normie politician, and that's fine. I respectfully disagree strategically with that. But even me, like when I was running, I wore a suit and tie. I wore a black suit, white shirt, black tie. So it's like the anonymous uniform, and it's a waiter's or chauffeur's outfit. I think that sends a certain message as well. But there are, so I felt like I was able to satisfy people on both sides of that line, whereas John McAfee was more on the no, screw decorum side of things. And there will, and I think a lot of people use this divisiveness as infiltrators to create fault lines that aren't there, where we'd rather be unified and don't care that much about such superficial things like, does your candidate have long hair and a beard or anything like that? Or is he John fucking McAfee? Is that a stylistic problem for you that he's going to tell it like it is, or that he's open about his drug use and sexual lifestyle? And if that's a problem for you, okay, I can respect that. But most libertarians would have said, oh, if John McAfee's the nominee, yeah, we'll get behind him like anybody else. And I think that was it's true about, the LP. I mean, you look at the two major parties in the United States. Right. There was a huge chunk of the GOP that said, if Trump gets the nomination, we're out of here. Right. And a huge chunk of the Dems that said, if Biden gets the nomination, we're out of here. And so with the LP, there's that element as well.
So in regards to Jo Jorgensen, the nominee, just again for my own education, was she sort of the candidate who the establishment liked, or was she like a compromise candidate between maybe different factions?
Yeah, I'm gonna stay away from commenting on that out of respect for my friend Joe.
Okay.
At best, I'll just say this. I believe that she's entirely like I'll say this about Alex Jones as an example. When I call him controlled opposition, people go, "What? He means what he says." Like that's not what controlled opposition means. Alex Jones got big on AM radio. The gatekeepers wanted him to get big, right? Somebody who could have controlled the process wanted Joe to get the nomination, right? Or maybe it was the result of some other influence. But
to be frank, and to put on my conspiracy theorist hat here a little bit, I see kind of similar trends where Jesse Ventura was interested. He submitted a letter of interest to the Green Party, and even months before that on the show actually said that he was interested in being the Green Party candidate. You have talked about running for president, or the possibility of you running for president for years.
Yeah.
You've also, been supportive of people on both kind of the right and the left, the Libertarian Party and the Green Party. I know you've been supportive of. You've spoken fondly of Ron Paul, Dennis Kucinich, Ralph Nader, Gary Johnson, Jill Stein. I think that it would be awesome if you were to run for president and seek the nomination of both the Libertarian Party and the Green Party. Is that something that might ever...
I don't think that could happen because the Libertarians don't believe in climate change. That's what drove me away from them. That's why I went to the Green Party, because I believe that is the most important thing on the planet right now. And the Libertarians don't buy it.
So will you ever run for president? Will you seek the Green Party?
I don't know. You'll find out in the spring.
Okay.
Why would I do it now? Wait till the pikers are gone.
Okay. Well, Governor...
It's all about tactics, man. It's tactics. That's how you win. It ain't time now. It's too early.
I sincerely hope that you do run for president this year. And I think it would be awesome if you did.
Well, let me just leave you with this. What do you think about a ticket? Imagine this ticket. Governor Jesse Ventura and Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
That sounds great. I would love to see that.
He quits the Democratic Party and joins me with the Greens.
Let's make it happen. Again, Jill Stein isn't running this year, so the Green Party is having a contentious...
Don't hold your breath, but it's far too early. You got to at least get in the year of the election before you worry about that stuff.
The Green Party of Alaska actually did end up nominating him, and Cynthia McKinney was his running mate in Alaska specifically. But I see that situation where they don't nominate Jesse Ventura, and they make sure, it was kind of a long, drawn-out process as to how and why, but it was pretty much ensured from the beginning that Howie Hawkins was going to be the nominee, whether anybody liked it or not. And I look at the Libertarian Party, where, similar to Jesse Ventura, John McAfee is this household name. I think that John McAfee in a lot of ways does embody sort of the spirit of the Libertarian Party, and you figure he would be a great candidate. But again, you ended up with somebody who, honestly, I had never heard of before. So, again, I just wonder how much that may have been planned and how much there may have been an effort to make sure that Donald Trump and Joe Biden were the only household names on the ballot in November.
The interests of those manipulating the Libertarian and Green parties and all other subversive activist movements throughout the world, and I mean subversive in the best way possible, subverting systems of injustice and profiteering, their interest is just to keep us weak and irrelevant. If you to reference COINTELPRO, their objective was not to murder activists. Their objective was to render the anti-war movement and Black Panther or Black Power movements irrelevant or incapable. And they achieved their goals. And I hugely respect my brothers and sisters in the Green Party, because this is where we are on the same page, saying we're not just going to let the big injustices of the world go. We're not just going to go along because this is the way things are and this is the bigger team, and we're going to go with the Democrats or the Republicans or whatever, or be complacent. we are going to acknowledge the reality of this injustice in the world.